Imagine a
everyone.
world that ensures that all minors and juveniles learn to be true disciplinarians from the consequences of their actions. Our lives would be surely safer. The youth would grow up to be more civilized, and future generations could learn from the examples of ones before them. When a little 10-year-old commits a crime and barely learns his lesson, society does not benefit. But when he is treated like an adult, he would practically never even dare to commit a crime again. Kids as old as 10 should be at least scared to commit crimes, as strange as that sounds. Then you have teens who are probably more prone to do worse things than younger people, yet are still tried as juveniles. To put it simply, juveniles that are at least 10 of age should be tried as adults. It may sound harsh, but youngsters need to truly face the consequences when they're little. Why wait for them to be adults to face severe consequences? They possess full awareness of their wrongdoings.
Some people have different opinions on whether or not children should be tried as adults when they are faced in the court of law. Where the concept of this argument is such debate. Children, as we know, make a lot of mistakes in life, and that's part of being human. Not many kids understand fully after they make a mistake how hard, badly,
Just keep going, bro. Just keep going. It's fine. Just keep going. Just relax.
how badly they have messed up. If they're to be tried in court with having to understand the consequences, understand the consequences for their actions, they wouldn't be fully understanding or comprehend the graveness of what they did done to that affect their lives. And all their brains are still developing, and as young children or adolescents at that point, they still are maturing and figuring out life. During that period of time is when children need the most support, and putting them through the prison system and trying them in court as an adult doesn't help them in the long run with their development as people and as adults. If anything, it ends up turning into trauma for them, which may lead them down a bad path in life, and for them to not learn from their mistake, but rather make more mistakes. It would be more beneficial for the kid to be tried as a juvenile rather than an adult for a serious crime, as it allows for more helpful resources to be at their hands to help them in the right path. It allows them to have a better understanding and shows them a better path in life if they are exposed to rehabilitation, education, and interventions that can help them become productive members of society. As for kids compared to adults, the regard for mental health and all issues that may be seen if a child is tried as an adult is something that the justice system has to consider, as there are many negative outcomes that can come out of a child being tried as an adult and later up ending in an adult prison. According to the National Juvenile Justice System, it states that an estimated 250,000 youth are tried, sentenced, or incarcerated as adults a year. The daily amount is around 10,000 youth being arrested. Studies show that youth held in adult facilities are 36 times more likely to commit suicide and are the greatest risk of sexual victimization. Youth of color are overrepresented in the ranks of juveniles being referred to adult court, as well further supporting that they are likely to return to commit crime if they are tried as adults. Since not enough support is given to them as well, according to the Coalition of Juvenile Justice, it states, while some may argue that many people with mental health issues do not go on to commit crimes, these statistics are especially concerning when compared to the general youth population, when only 14% to 20% of youth have a diagnosable mental health disorder, whereas reliable data suggests that approximately 66% of youth in the justice system have at least one diagnosable mental health disorder. Adding on, Aaron Law Firm states in the state of California, Proposition 21 of the Juvenile Justice Initiative in February 2021, a unanimous decision by the California Supreme Court put an end to the harsh measures of putting kids into adult prisons, which led to overcrowded prisons and development issues for juvenile offenders. The law allowed minors to face adult consequences for crimes and possibly transfer a 14 to 17-year-old into an adult criminal court. Many found that these laws were too harsh and led to significant social development and economic problems for the minors charged as adults.
The severity of the offense should determine the outcome. If a kid has committed a horrible crime, they should be persecuted as adults. Everyone, even teenagers, makes mistakes. Nevertheless, rape or murder are not acts that are carried out carelessly. Regardless of the age of the perpetrator, teenagers who torture and murder someone or perpetrate rape, a horrible and serious crime, should not be treated like children. Juveniles who commit crimes should not be given any justification. If they are permitted to lead regular lives, they will continue to commit crimes. Laws must be applied to punish them. Juveniles may have their reasons, like being in a bad position, gangs, or something that may cost their life, and others may be easily influenced by family households. But despite the reason, if you know what you're doing is wrong, why do it at all? Families who have lost a sense of closure or security, as well as victims of rapes and murders, have been abandoned. Some people believe that no one acknowledges their loss. The juveniles that have caused this act can walk away without a less serious punishment than an adult would receive, and that is not okay. If they do not get punished, they would never learn and continue to grow up doing worse and worse because they think they can get anything they want now. If times don't change, then history is going to repeat itself and not learn from their mistakes. Juveniles arrested or convicted for a criminal offense may be housed in juvenile residential facilities or in adult jails and prisons. Depending on state statute, judicial discretion, and federal law, the number of juveniles incarcerated in all U.S. adult prisons or jails declined from a peak of 10,420 in 2008 to a low of 2,250 in 2021. In 2021, local jails had custody of 1,960 juveniles, while state and federal adult prisons held 290. According to the Bureau of Justice of Statistics, 1,960 juveniles were in jail and 290 were in prison, and the total incarcerated is 2,250 juveniles. Only 7% of child arrests were for violent crimes, and approximately 85% of them are being held as adults. The seriousness of the crime. Some crimes are so terrible that the perpetrator, regardless of age, should be held accountable in the adult criminal justice system. According to those who support trying juveniles as adults, they contend that in order to ensure that aggressive and dangerous offenders are punished and held accountable for their acts, juvenile defendants must be tried as adults, and accountability and responsibility. Juveniles being tried as adults emphasizes the need of taking responsibility for one's own conduct. It highlights that people must deal with the legal ramifications of their decisions at any age, encouraging people to take responsibility for their actions and face the consequences of unlawful behavior. Public safety. The public is shielded from future harm by juveniles being tried as adults, which is another reason in favor of the practice. Serious criminals who are minors are frequently seen as having a high chance of reoffending, and many people think that persecuting them as adults will lower this risk and shield the public from harm in the future. You would want to live in a place where crimes like these are uncommon. If minors were to commit crimes there, families would feel frightened and secure, which would negatively impact children's early years and alter their personalities as adults. Deterrence. Advocates contend that persecuting minors as adults will discourage other minors from considering committing crimes. They think by threatening to have an adult trial, juvenile offenders will be discouraged from committing significant offenses, which will lower the overall number of minor crimes.
I've had many questions on why children should not be tried the same as adults should. Some of these being, what are their past traumatic experiences? What are their outside influences? Are their maturity levels the same as adults? Do these juveniles face mental health issues in juvenile justice systems? Children should not be tried as adults for a multitude of reasons, based on what is ethically right and our understanding of their adolescent development. We also must look at post-traumatic experiences within the juvenile. So first, we have to understand that children are still constantly maturing. As a woman named Labina said in her argumentative essay, the brain structure and function undergo considerable changes during adolescence. Adolescents are more vulnerable to irrational decision-making caused by impulsivity and a reward of sensation-seeking behavior due to their psychosocial immaturity. Children's brain regions connected to impulse control and emotional maturity are still developing. The brain structure of a juvenile is not the same as that of an adult. Juveniles are more vulnerable to making bad decisions because of their tendency to act without thinking. Their behavior seeks sensation due to their psychosociological immaturity. Reward sensitivity and sensation seeking motivate youth to engage in risky acts, causing them to engage in illegal activity. Trying children as adults overlooks brain development, which expects them to possess the same decision making as the average adult would. Another factor we must consider in their post-traumatic experiences and what further trauma they will experience being incarcerated. As Abina also states, the overwhelming number of imprisoned adolescents were abused or neglected as children and are dealing with psychological disorders while serving time. Even while the counter-argument that many factors, not only childhood trauma, play a role in mental health is correct, studies have found a substantial link connecting severe maltreatment and increased aggressive and defiant tendencies. Youth in the justice system have frequently encountered higher degrees of trauma than the average youth population. As Sean C. McGarvey states in his article of Juvenile Justice and Mental Health, studies have shown the rate of traumatic victimization among youth in the justice system is as high as 75%. We must therefore take more action to prevent at-risk teenagers from being victims of our broken judicial system, rather than locking up kids for misbehaving because of their family situations. Another essential consideration are juveniles' outside influences. Children can be manipulated by adults and have negative outside influences. These influences can cause them to engage in criminal activities, and their lack of maturity and understanding of the consequences may render them more to blame than the outside influences they have experienced. Instead of holding children accountable for the actions of an adult, the juvenile legal system should take into consideration the influences of others and give the child's protection a top priority. Lastly, a main point we should look at is if these children suffer any mental illness. As Los Angeles criminal lawyer article states, minors who are housed in juvenile detention facilities have a rate of mental health disorders that is 3 times that of the general youth population. In fact, studies have shown that between 65 and 70% of minors in the juvenile justice have a diagnosable mental health condition. Juveniles are prone to attaining mental illness as they are out in these justice facilities. They suffer many traumas that they would not have suffered outside of their facility. Now, throughout my research, I found that children being tried as adults has begun to steadily decrease over the span of the recent decade. Here are some statistics that I found through the Bureau of Justice Statistics to back this up. The number of juveniles incarcerated in all U.S. adult prisons or jails declined from a peak of 10,420 in 2008 to a low of 2,250 in 2021. In 2021, local jails had custody of 1,960 juveniles, while state and federal adult prisons held 290. The percent of the total jail population who were juveniles declined from 0.9% in 2002 to 0.3% in 2020. The percent of the total prison population who were juveniles declined from 0.2% in 2002 to 0.2% in 2021. And in 2021, 87% of juveniles in adult correctional facilities were held in local jails and 13% were held in prisons, compared to 66% in local jails and 34% in prisons in 2002. To recap what I've been arguing, our legal system for children should aim to put them in the right direction rather than punish them like our juvenile criminal facilities have done.
Okay. In certain cases, juveniles may possess a level of maturity and understanding of their actions that is comparable to that of adults, making them more suitable candidates for being tried as adults. Let's take a 15-year-old, for example. I'll use a 15-year-old because that is that age of puberty where we really see a change in our bodies, more specifically the brain. According to Lumen Learning, for girls, the brain reaches its largest physical size around 11 years old, and for boys, the brain reaches its largest physical size around 14 years old. This is not to be mistaken with brain development and maturity, which ends in around your early 20s. We are told that until puberty, brain cells continue to bloom in the frontal region. We are also keeping in mind that according to the kidshealth.org, puberty generally starts as early as the age of 9, but we generally see signs of brain changes at age 10 in boys, even 8 in girls with the same ages of significant brain changes. Some of the most developmentally significant changes in the brain occur in the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision-making and cognitive control, as well as higher cognitive functions, which is also from Lumen Learning. And according to Harvard.edu, the adolescent brain is typically at least 85% developed by the age of 14 to 15. With those numbers in mind, we could assume that someone at the age of 15 has relatively close cognitive abilities to that of an adult. We could also make the conclusion that adolescent teens, including those at 10 years of age, already possess proper reasoning skills that determine their decisions, since their prefrontal cortex, which again controls their decision making, develops most at this time. That remaining 15%, while that remaining 15% of lack of development does not, that remaining 50% lack of development does not and should not draw the line between those who are tried as adults and those who are not. Although Lumen Learning does say that the prefrontal cortex still develops into adulthood, which would be that remaining 50%, teens already possess enough reasoning to understand that things like robbery, murder, and assault are simply not right. In the blog from the Aaron Law Firm by William Aaron, we are told that in February of 2021, a decision in the California Supreme Court made it so that 14 and 15-year-olds can't be charged as adults for most crimes. Let's think about that and put ourselves into a situation where we've committed quite a less serious crime than, let's say, murder. Let's say you've had possession of a illegal drug and were caught selling it. The San Diego criminal law defense tells us that most juvenile drug offenses are adjudicated in California juvenile courts, but they should always be tried as adults. If you were tried as a juvenile, which practically you are almost guaranteed to be, you'll probably just go to some rehabilitation center where you'll have weekly therapy. Well, that's not enough. Just like you always tell yourself, I won't wait till Sunday to finish all my homework. You end up waiting till 11 o'clock, like you end up back with drugs in your hands after all that rehabilitation. This may seem like quite the generalization, but we're all teens and we know how our minds work. We can often be impulsive, but our impulsiveness does not excuse impulsive decisions that lead to crimes. Those are called stupid decisions, not impulsive decisions. We can often be impulsive, but our impulsiveness does not excuse impulsive decisions that lead to crimes. Those are called stupid decisions. Teens ages 15 and 14 should always be tried as adults so that they truly understand their consequences and so that they are ensured a future where they aren't drug sellers on streets. But now let's look at situations in which juveniles must be tried as adults, and rightfully so. In an article from Paul Warren from Wallen and Clare, criminal defense attorney, we are told that murder with special circumstances, that if the prosecutor alleges that the minor personally killed the victim, then that automatically triggers the prosecution of a minor as an adult for those of at least 14 years old. It is a shame that this age is not lowered because almost all of us can agree that by the age of 10, we can understand the severity of something like murder, which is also backed up by the development of our prefrontal cortex, which is heavily developed at that age. It would be extremely hard to argue against the prosecution of a 14-year-old as an adult who willingly deliberately kills / hurts someone. The Aaron Law Firm also tells us that these following crimes allow for the chance for juveniles to be tried in court: murder, certain sex crimes, kidnapping, assault with a firearm, assault with a firearm or destructive device, torture, and voluntary manslaughter. So I was just talking about California, but we see a trend of similar ages in which those. Sorry, let me restart. I was just talking about California, but we see a trend of similar ages of which ages can be tried as adults in different states. In New York, it is 13 and up, according to the criminal law in Long Island, New York. In Florida, it is 14 and up, according to the shepherdwhite.com. And Pennsylvania, it is 14 and up, according to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. And shockingly, in Texas, they can be only tried as adults when they're 17. The Southern Poverty Law Center gives us this data. Only 3.7% of arrested juveniles in 2019 to 2020 were actually tried as adults. According to the kidsdata.org, 42% of all arrested juveniles are arrested for violent crimes, and these violent crimes include the same ones that make up the list of when a juvenile can be tried as an adult, which were the ones that I stated, and that's a general consensus of all states, because obviously most states have different laws and regulations, but that's generally the consensus of majority of states, according to the Aaron Law Firm. So 3.7 out of 42% are actually tried as an adult, despite these crimes being so severe. This shows us that the system is flawed. How can only that few handful actually undergo justice? Just imagine that one of your family members is murdered just because the suspect is not 18, they never end up getting, they can't be guaranteed getting the punishment that they deserve. And now you have the rest of your life knowing that they are still out there, despite ripping a piece from your family away and getting away with it.
If a person continuously fails to learn from their mistakes and continues to be a hazard for the people around them, how can we just let them be set free without any consequences? Now, being armed with this knowledge that most adolescents have already developed enough brain maturity to make rational enough decisions, how can we excuse anyone with a developed enough brain to continuously make mistakes over and over? Sure, if the offender is a child, they still have a whole life ahead of them, and their future should not be decided on a silly mistake. However, if the child continuously fails to see the punishment of their crimes as a threat, there should be no excuse to not throw them into prison, or at least to be tried as a fully fledged adult. It is also important because habitual offenders, regardless of how old they are, pose a threat to the well-being of the community and society. Children should not keep being given chances despite continuously doing a offense over and over. If children know that the punishments are not severe and are aware of the fact that the worst that could happen to them is juvenile detention, nothing is stopping them from again repeating the crime as they are not afraid of what may happen to them. Some need to realize that children pose just as much of a threat to society as many adult criminal offenders. Leaving a murderer scot-free without any punishment, regardless of any age, is still leaving a murderer out in the real world who is able to harm anyone at any time. It has been proven that most children offenders are, in fact, repeated offenders, as according to the Division of Juvenile Justice, or DJJ, 74.2% of youth were rearrested, 53.8% were reconvicted of new offenses, and 37.3% were returned to the custody of the state within only 3 years of release from juvenile detention. 25.8% of juveniles go back to do the same offense. This is in comparison to the statistics from policepolicy.org, which show that a bare 21% of adults who were arrested were then rearrested throughout their lifetime. This literally proves that most of the child offenders are relentless and continue to pose a threat to society even after being sent to juvenile detention. It further even shows that many are so relentless as to commit the exact same crime again that got them to jail the first time. It also shows that the threat of jail through being tried as an adult being in the equation scares most criminals away from redoing crimes and being rearrested, while on the other hand, the threat of only a juvenile offense does almost the opposite. It shows the lack of ability to learn from mistakes if not given true consequences through a real court. A question that may come up now is, but what type of crimes are these kids doing over and over that are getting them rearrested again and again? The answer to this is that it doesn't even matter. Whether it is a petty crime or a serious violent crime, these juveniles are getting the same treatment as most other juveniles, whether their crime is serious or not, and that these juveniles are simply not learning from their experience in juvenile detention. As shown from Alexander's statistics he found, even if many of these juveniles meet the criteria for being allowed to be tried as an adult through crimes such as homicide, around 3% of them are actually tried. A study at the University of South Florida goes on to show that a whopping 90% of released juvenile offenders were rearrested during a 30-year follow-up, 60% of which were rearrested for violent crimes. This is in comparison to the mere 20% of violent adults that were rearrested for violent crimes, according to the Public Policy Institute of California. 20% versus 60%. This is indisputable evidence that the threat of actual jail or maybe even the death penalty through getting tried as an adult is helpful to stopping those who have been arrested once to not have a repeat offense. The truth is clear that although many juveniles probably should probably be given a chance, the likelihood of these offenders recommitting a crime is extremely high. Allowing a violent individual who can be statistically expected to commit a crime walks around risks so many lives. Of course, it is also important that the severity of the crime should be taken into account. A harmless crime like petty theft, in most cases, should not result in being tried as an adult, as these are mistakes that can be learned through juvenile detention and do not necessarily pose a huge danger to society. However, a child committing a crime involving some type of violence is statistically predicted to come back and commit another violent act, as shown by the USSC.gov, where statistics show 63.8% of juvenile offenders return later on in their lives to be violent again. This proves that many juveniles who are violent in the early years will carry that nature with them for later years, and it is better for them to get kept out of society earlier on before others are risked.
All right. In conclusion, envisioning a world where minors and juveniles learn the essence of discipline through the repercussions of their actions would profoundly impact our society. Such a transformation would ensure enhanced safety in our lives, in our society. When a 10-year-old commits a crime without grasping its gravity, society gains nothing. However, treating them as adults would significantly deter them from repeating such actions. There should be a level of apprehension instilled in children regarding the commission of crimes. Even teenagers who might be more inclined towards severe aggressions are often tried as juveniles. Simply put, juveniles should face trials as adults. While it may seem strict, it is crucial for young individuals to confront their consequences early on. Why postpone severe repercussions until they reach adulthood? Thank you.
Wait, G Lopez, you guys have a conclusion? Or
Yes, I have Alessios. Should I read Alessios?
yeah, just do it.
Okay. Um. Okay. In summary, it is crucial that we emphasize the constant state of maturation among the children who are being tried. Everyone is not growing up and maturing at the same rate as everyone else, which is very clearly seen as you go through grade school and high school. The structural and functional changes in their brains during the years of adolescence make these children much more vulnerable to make impulsive decisions as well as a sensation-seeking behavior, which is completely overlooked when trying a child as fully developed and matured adult. The fact that their brains are still under development and are in a constant state of development is a point that needs to be acknowledged. Expecting these children to possess the same decision-making capabilities as adults is asinine. It is said that when you put a juvenile in a situation with seasoned criminals such as adult prison, they are still impressionable and likely end up becoming involved in gang or other crime activities. This further hinders their ability to rehabilitate after they are released. Putting these children straight to prison may seem like a fast fix for this complex situation, but it will have insurmountable effects later down the road for the child, the development, and society when they are released out of jail. Not only will releasing these adolescents from prison have traumatizing effects on them, but their criminal record follows. Crimes that are on your juvenile records hold much less weight in the world than those on your adult record. By putting a juvenile into adult court, you are also affecting their adult criminal record. This will follow them all throughout life, especially when trying to get a decent job. Also note that 75% of all juvenile offenders are boys between the ages of 14 and 17. This creates a lifetime effect for not only juveniles in question, but for the family. Charging juveniles in adult court will often cause expenses that can more likely than not worsen the poverty of that family. It is stated that the economic burden of court costs, legal fees, restitution, and visitation can have long-term consequences for everyone involved. It creates a lifetime of negative impacts for the child because they have multiple obstacles in their way to create that what is necessary, assuming that they are not serving multiple decades in prison for their crime in the first place. Pushing for trying these adults in court as adults should be frowned upon because I believe, although it solves the problem, it is the solution. It only creates a more deranged and hopeless youth that will later on go to do very bad things. Thank you.